Hello. That is my first video of that kind, so why I'm doing it? I've seen quite recently on Facebook forums, etc., people using the ZCI bearing axle gears, putting them in, and after a few games having the gearbox shattered with those gears falling apart, and especially that sector gear. So there is a certain amount of preparation you need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen before you install that gear in your gearbox. They come in different ratios, so there's 13:1, 16:1, 18:1, and I think there's a 14:1 as well. I've not seen anything else on in the UK market, but maybe they do different versions as well. But they all come with the same way of how the sector gear is built. So we'll come to that in a second. The bevel gear is standard bevel gear. It doesn't have a floating axle. It's just a standard bevel gear. Quite a good quality CNC. Spur gear, it has got that separate axle that runs on the bearing inside, which increases or reduces that efficiency loss, because it actually can spin on that as well as on the bearings or bushings in the gearbox, which is quite an interesting design, and so far it has been very good for me and for my builds. But usually there's nothing wrong with it. I've had one where that part was slightly separated, but so I had to replace it, but that just happened once in quite a few I've already used, so that's not something to be worried about, but just to make sure when you get them to check that as well. But this is the gear that causes most of the issues, and the issue being is that when it's in use and not prepped how it's properly, those screws, let me just grab some pointer, those screws come off, so it separates those two parts of a gear and basically creates a havoc inside of your gearbox. So this video will be about how to prepare that gear for installation and for use. Okay, so let's start with that. Remove the shaft, you don't need it for now. First of all, remove the delayer bearing. It's a bearing as well, so that spins, which is quite a good design. Sometimes you need to, with a flat screwdriver, wedge it a bit underneath. You've got enough gap on that screw to be able to do that. Just slot in there and push it out, just like that, so it starts moving up, and eventually you will be able to grab it with pliers and pull it out. Some of them you don't need to do it, they will come off with the pliers straight away. But if you need to lift it a bit first, then please do so. And don't be afraid to squeeze on it, that is quite hard material, so it will not warp, it will not change. Let me just put some force, there we go. Slightly lifted already, and just a bit more force and it will come off. And the reason why we need to do that is to get access to that screw that sits underneath. There's two reasons why we need to take those screws off. First of all, they are not secured at all, they are very loose, So you can quite easily remove them. As you can see, I don't need to put any force at all to it. Secondly, there's usually a slight gap just under that pin that lifts that part of a gear, lifts it up and makes it uneven. So when you shim it properly and leave a limited gap between, that will catch the spur gear just slightly. So you are limiting yourself on how well you can shim your gearbox because of that. But if you prepare it in advance, you can remove that gap. Make sure that it sits flush all the way around. So let's remove those gears, those screws I mean. As you can see, there's almost no pressure that I need to apply to remove them, so they are very, very loose, and that's why they are falling apart when you put them in straight away. So now we can take it off, just to remember which position it was there. So that A1 is above that pin. Okay, inside you will have that metal piece between those two, so that gives that mirror finish there. Not sure if it's required or not, but it just looks nice. And the reason why this gear sits at slight angle is that part here. So this is the pushed in pin and bent and flattened to make sure that it doesn't come out, but it creates uneven surface there. So you need to grind it down a bit to make it as flat as possible, so you can then put that gear part flat to the surface. So we are going to do it now. Let me just grab my grinder somewhere. Okay, let me just remove that part. And you're just doing with a standard grinding tool or Dremel, whatever. Let me just find the right end. Okay. Okay, now let's just grind it down. Okay, let me just change the tool for a different one, which I can get to that corner a bit easier. Just a second. Let's go with that. one more piece left there that I need to use something sharper to get off. In that corner there, the small piece there that I cannot get into, so I will use that. Maybe that will do it. And you just basically work it out until it's as flush as you can make it. I think we've got that sorted. So now it's flush. Let's just clean it down a bit. Need that cloth. Okay, so now when it's flush, that second part of the gear will sit nicely on it and flush against there, so you will not have that gap between them. It's a very tiny gap, so you will not see it on camera, but it will just cause you some struggle with shimming it properly. So I'll put that back in, and where are the holes? I've lost the holes. There we go. There, slot that in, and then put that in there. Okay, align those, and then you can put the screws back in. But before we do that, we need to use some thread lock to make sure that those screws will not come out. When we start using the gearbox. Come on. I don't like those tiny screws. Okay, so that's one. And I just screw them in as you would normal. Okay, do not screw that one full in, because we need to make sure that we can align the rest of it properly. So just make sure that it's, you know, tight but not too tight, so we can still align the rest of the holes for the rest of the screws. Okay. And now we should be okay. So that's in. And the last one. I'm not sure what thread lock you should be using. There's different, I know there's different strengths, etc., but I can't see you need to take it off after you've done it, so use the strongest one, I presume. But that's the one I've got, and it worked for me up to now. So now make sure that you tighten them up as much as you can without damaging the heads. The heads are quite fragile, so just be careful on that, because they will break. If you got a nice, better quality Allen key, the easier it will be to do without breaking the heads. Okay, just work them in one by one until you are satisfied with that there's no more force you need to apply, and you are happy with how secure they are. You can see now this sits perfectly flush, when before at the point of that joint that was lifted up. And this last thing we need to do when we do that, finish that off, well, two things. One, you need to, before you put them in and start using them, then make sure that the thread lock is all done. And the second thing now is, you can see when you put them screws in properly, they actually coming out here. And that's another place where if you don't grind them off, they will interfere with a spare gear, and that shimming will not be possible to be completed to the best of abilities you can do. So that's tight, that's tight, that's tight. So let's grind off those screw heads to make them flush with the gear. There's my grinder. It will not look pretty, but we're not after pretty, we're after efficient and longevity. Pretty, you can have your outside of the gearbox. And there we are, that's done. Let me just give this a bit of clean again. Wipe all those metal shards off. And that is almost finished. So now you can see that is flush. The last part we need to do is put that delay bearing back on. It's easy push in, spins, that's okay, and the shaft or axle back on. Okay, now give it 24 hours or however you want long for the thread lock to work, to dry, and you can put it into your gearbox, knowing that it will not fall apart within first use or when you don't want to fall apart. So that's all ready. Okay, I hope you liked it. I hope that whoever will use those gears will not be shouting on forums anymore, saying that they are crap, they are breaking apart. They just need a bit more preparation before using them. Thanks.